Okay, we'll start the session titled Building an Educational Institution of Excellence, being moderated by Mr. Amin Hashwani. Amin Hashwani is a businessman, social activist, and an English language poet. He has founded and continues to support initiatives in the field of education, health, youth development, art, culture, and peace building. I'd like to request everyone to please keep your phones on silent. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Assalamualaikum. We keep this a very, very fast-paced session. The reason is because there's a lot of content. We have panelists with high bandwidth, and we keep it a very fast session so that we can get the maximum returns from this session. The title you people are familiar with. I'll skip the introductions because it's there, and for paucity of time, we will you guys can read on them. I'll just give a few minutes of introduction to just set the context of this conversation, and then we'll enter into two rounds of Q&A with the panelists, and then we would like to open it up to the audience. So institutions, as you all know, they are the fundamental building blocks of any society or nation. Dr. Ishrat alluded on that during the last session. We not only need strong, independent, and sustainable institutions, but also we need vibrant and evolving institutions that have the capacity to evolve solutions, indigenous solutions that are relevant to their own societies. So this is very, very important. You can't import solutions from outside to address your own unique situation. So you need the institutional capacity to build them. Education, again, a very vital building block for any country. And when we talk about education, we don't just talk about the academic education, but we also talk about the critical thinking which we need to inculcate in our children so they can question our assumptions and challenge some of our prejudices or some of our biases within our society. We need to inculcate soft skills, be it about compassion, be it about being a better human being. We need to inculcate civic sense, civic skills, so that they become better citizens of the country and they can very proactively play a vital part in the future destiny of a nation. So, with institutions and with education comes institution of educational excellence. So this is the crossroad. This is for me the holy grail, which if any nation gets it right, there's a very good chance that it's on its way to become a progressive and a developed country. Sabahat is from California, and she would vouch that without the UC university system in California, there would be no Silicon Valley. Or for that matter, without IIT, there wouldn't be any Bangalore in India. So they're all interlinked. Today we have very distinguished panelists with management, and we will not be talking about them as individuals, but the institutions that they have been associated with. And paradoxically, by building those institutions, some of the individuals have become institutions themselves. And I think we are very lucky to have them in one session here, although the room size does not justify it, but we will try and make the best of it. So we have in the field of health, management, arts, and primary education. So let us begin with Dr. Start with you. I have a question. IDA, founded in 1955, Wharton University, then you had UPenn and University of California. It was the first management school university outside the US in 1955. So that was quite significant. First management university outside America, be it Europe, no way, it was Pakistan. And of course it had its glory days, and then it went through a decline, and then it went through a revival. Dr. Ishrat was associated with it from the year 2008 till 2016. So Dr. Saab, we need to know very briefly what was your turnaround strategy and how you managed that. So Dr. Saab, before you came, I just said that we keep it a very fast one, 3 to 4 minutes for each.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the strategy was starting from the attraction, retention, and motivation of faculty. No institution in the world can actually function if you don't have an excellent faculty. Now, the infrastructure and the incentive structure in IBA were not conducive. The faculty members didn't have a room where they could sit, they could study, they could prepare, they could do research. They were all sitting in a common room. So my strategy was, if I want to bring in people from the US and the UK to come and teach here, I should provide them not only the monetary incentives, but also working environment. That led me to the strategy of infrastructure development, including technological innovation, so that people have access to their resources by introducing, learning modules, enterprise resource planning, and construction of and remodeling of 30 new projects during 8 years' time, which attracted a lot of people who were completely off the radar screen of IBA. We have today 64 PhDs from all over the world, very few from Pakistan, but from the best foreign universities. And that is the result of this strategy. And therefore, I would always say that the quality of an institution is dependent on the quality of the faculty.
Doctor, can you also, I know it's going down with negativity, but could you also identify the key factors of the institutional decline and decay that happened?
Well, because you could not really, in all honesty, have first-rate faculty members coming to this kind of situation where they were paid government salaries. There were no facilities for research. They were asked to teach 4 courses, and there was no allowance for research. Now, in our case, we said if you're doing research, then you can only teach 2 courses. We completely changed their salary structure. It is triple the government salary structure. They are given first-rate facilities as far as the research grants are concerned, physical accommodation is concerned. So that, I think, is the what I call is the foundation of good teaching. Now, all researchers are not good teachers, and I'm the first one to confess that my emphasis on research has had negative outcomes also, that some of the teachers which we would have hired, we couldn't hire them because they were not PhDs. But in that bargain, I lost some good teachers. At the same time, I have good researchers who are not very good teachers. So there are pros and cons of this strategy.
The Khan University Hospital, I think when you talk about institutions of education excellence, I think AKU stands out, it epitomizes it. It began in it's opened its doors in 1983. Mr. Lakha was the president. So I'd like to ask you, what was His Highness's vision for creating the Khan University Hospital, and also how much do you feel it has been fulfilled as we speak now?
Thank you. I think I can only give you a quote from His Highness himself, which he spoke at a function in 1994 when we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of the university. We had our large number of volunteers and donors. There were close to 10,000 people in the Shamiana one evening. Board of trustees were there, and we requested him to say a few words. So I think if I can repeat that, that may give you why did he establish this institution. He said that many people have asked me why I established AKU. And he said, I established it after a lot of thought and asking myself, what would bring back the glory that once belonged to the Ummah? The Ummah was very well placed several centuries ago. What was it that can bring back that glory? He said, I thought a great deal and came to the conclusion that no amount of riches or military might will bring back that glory to the Ummah. It will be only the development of the human resources of the men and women of the Ummah that we can aspire to one day achieve that height that we were at. And he made that so succinctly that every time I think about it, I said, if we don't succeed in training those people, then we have lost the game. Let me give you another example. At the graduation ceremony of, at the first graduation of the medical college, I had arranged a tea with the students who were graduating. I said it would be nice for the Chancellor, because His Highness is the Chancellor, to meet the students. He met the faculty, he met everybody. And with the students, he was left alone. And I was right behind, several spaces behind, but listening in quietly. The students asked, now that we have graduated, Your Highness, what would you like us to do? What is your advice? He said, I have only two words: serve Pakistan. This is the reason why I have established this institution: serve your country. So these were the objectives. Of course, there are many other important attributes, because at the time that AKU became a university, there were no private universities east of Suez right until you hit Japan. There were no private universities across Asia. So to get that done and to be able to convince the bureaucrats and the politicians, but I must give the credit to General Ziaul Haq. He is largely maligned in our literature, but it is also important to give credit where it belongs. And it was he who accepted the notion of a private university, and then Dr. Muhammad Afzal, whom you know, he and I negotiated a charter, and we set a pattern for private universities. And I have to say, if this has become a success, I would totally endorse Dr. Ishrat's point that it is the faculty and the staff, of course, which made it happen. And I have to say that many I can see are already here in the audience: Dr. Belani, Dr. Lindblad, and others, and Talat Tayyabji. They are the ones who put their sweat and blood into creating this institution. It wasn't a one-man affair. But finally, one of the ways in which it created good quality is what Dr. Ishrat mentioned in his lecture earlier: good governance and good management. That is what brings institutions alive. No matter how much money you put into it, it's not going to make it. Thank you.
Wasif. Liberal arts, my God. I mean, we capitalists call them a bunch of tree huggers, irrelevant to the economic prosperity of a country where secularism is connotated with ladiniyat, and liberal, as one of our leading politicians called, the worst enemies of the country, and with promiscuous connotations, liberals, the word liberal. So here you are, leading a liberal arts university in the heart of Karachi. Tell us, how has been the experience, what was the objective, and how relevant have you guys been within 3 minutes?
Right. Okay. Well, we were lucky, right? So, Dr. Lakha had already done all the hard work to create the precedence of a private university. And Dr. Ishrat had already spoiled the market. So we came right after that, right? So just to speak to this topic, I think one of the things that we did very early on, we had few research studies launched for about a year. And one of them was on higher education itself. So we learned some fundamental facts about higher education. This is not an organic thing. It's not made by God, human beings. So there's obviously a theory to it. So in that, so there's a very interesting study, a chronicle of higher education did about 2009 or something, that what do all great universities have in common? This is the answer that perhaps so they're very different. They all have fierce characters and they are rivals and etc. So one of the things that they did discover was that they all have a sense of very serious mission, right? So it's not just a fancy line, but they tend to adhere to a motto that they had set, and which is almost immutable, right? So it doesn't change. So the example, the one that my favorite obviously was from MIT. So there was Veritas, which is right next to MIT, which is Harvard, which is a good mission, right? So it's truth, so that from a religious institution, it became the world's greatest research university in exploration of the truth. But MIT's mission is mens et manus, right? Mind and hand. So you see the entire character of the institution is driven by that, right? So then there is another one where any person can find instruction in any study. That was Ezra Cornell, right? So he did it, right? The university was established right after the Civil War. So the whole idea was that how to include the society again, minorities and so on in excellent field of study. So the mission is crucial, right? So we knew that we need to have a mission statement. The other one is again linked to their time in history. So this mission can come from some intrinsic drive, or it can respond to the time in history. We chose the latter, right? So we need to respond to the time in history, which is why we picked the liberal arts and we picked our mission, which is a saying of Hazrat Ali, which is "Qimatu kulli imri ma yuhsanahu." Your worth is in your yohsan. You're only as worthy as you do things beautifully, with passion, do them well, do them with a sense of service, right? We thought this is a great mission. Then you need to know the type of institution you're forming, right? So there are fundamentally two types, public and private, right? So private universities existed primarily in the US and a couple of them in Japan. So we needed to know that what is the institution which is run privately. And then what type of institutions? There are again three fundamental kinds. One is a research teaching institution, which is most of famous universities in the world. One is pure research like CERN or Institute for Advanced Studies, for instance. And the third one that we were after were more teaching, which is powered by a lot of research inquiry and support of undergraduate students, which are the liberal arts colleges. So all of these factors define the nature of excellence that one is pursuing in an institution. So in my next round, I'm going to elaborate on that.
All right. Okay. Sabahat, thank you very much for flying in from Lahore today for our session here. Sabahat is one individual whose ambitions are not only ambitious but audacious. And I met her husband in the US first time, and he said, if we cannot affect 1 million plus people, we are wasting our time. And that's exactly what the mission is. I'll let Sabahat explain exactly what you're doing. So tell me, your focus is primary education, get them when they're young, change the mindset, and you feel, look, I mean, as far as Pakistan's education landscape is concerned, all of you are familiar that they say the chain is as strong as its weakest link. And the weakest link for us is the teachers. Until we cannot develop the capacity of the teacher, it doesn't matter how bathroom lagate, infrastructure karte, it will really not matter much. It'll be good headlines for the politicians, but that's about it. Sabahat's entire initiative is focused on how do you build teachers' capacity. And if you follow the traditional model, you're looking at least 2 generations before we really get somewhere, given our limited resources, outreach, etc., etc. Now, Sabahat has an audacious ambition to actually do that within the next 1 decade and really change the landscape of Pakistan. She's one of the most dedicated individuals I've ever come across. She's putting her treasure and blood in this one initiative called United We Reach. Sabahat, can you please share what exactly is, and in 3 minutes, sorry.
I mean, I think it's unfair that you started enforcing the time limits as we started transitioning towards the women. I mean, genetically, we're not inclined to do that to begin with, and now you're trying to enforce the time limit as you're... I'm in minority, I can take my time. No, I'll be brief. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much for all the kind words. But do you want me to talk about what are... Okay. So essentially, when you talk about building institutions of excellence, you do need to focus on the core of the content, and you hit the problem right on the, in the head. There are two aspects that need immediate intervention. One is, of course, the capacity building. So sadly, at this point in Pakistan, we still have about 22.8 million kids out of school between the ages of 5 and 16. And that is not counting kids who've never been to school. So about a good 40% of our kids are not in school, and it's a travesty that we are from the bottom, number 2, in terms of out-of-school kids. So if you, by some miracle, were able to have the capacity to take all these kids into school, the big issue would be, do we have enough trained teachers to adequately address this problem? So essentially, we do need a scalable and sustainable system of training teachers rapidly. And this pace of execution needs to be in line with our population growth rate, because suppose you do that and you're not able to do it at a measurable scale, our problems multiply exponentially every 30 years. So that is one part of it. Second part is the core, just as you would have any institution where you have a product to sell and the product itself is faulty, no matter how well executed, how well delivered it is a bad product. So the core, the educational content in itself needs to be relevant to the needs of the 21st century. Sadly, while we are decolonized physically, we are not decolonized mentally. We're still invested heavily as a nation in the didactic method of teaching. Our content is outdated. Our kids, even when they do have a degree, is irrelevant to the needs of the global workplace. So when you are developing content, first you need to bridge the gap between the developing world and the developed world and make it a relevant education. So the product itself needs to be reinvented or at least refurbished adequately. Secondly, if you develop it and then we have a saying that the common sense of the last century, the research of the last century is common sense of the next. It has now been rephrased and people say that the research of last decade is common sense of the next. So if you have teachers, if you have content, and yet that content is not able to adapt to the pace of knowledge generation as we see in this century, it is irrelevant. So what United We Reach does is that we try to take these 3 things as our core. How am I doing on time?
It's fine.
Okay. Because I see. So essentially what we have taken on as a challenge is that we need to address at least these 3 things in the solution that we generate. And what we have done is that we have taken the core content of Pakistan's board, as it is we're working currently with the government of Punjab. And so we take the Punjab textbook board curriculum, then we supplement it and augment it with the international standards, in particular with the California standards. And California we picked because we are very heavily vested in science, because unless this nation can bring in inventors and innovators and not just reverse engineers, we still wouldn't have solved the problem. And you'll be happy to know that we have art as a component to it, so we use STEAM-based. So that is one part of it. Then what we do is that we have a team of what we call the master teachers, people who have PhDs and at least 30 years of experience in a first world context, and we have them create completely scripted lesson plans. So it's not just lesson plans, it's a complete script. We download it on a tablet, and so if we are able to find teachers whom we do the basic training on, basically on some pedagogy, but as long as they have good English fluency skills, and once we put the tablet in a teacher's hand, we're able to guarantee a baseline. So even when the government is scaling rapidly, and in Punjab they are trying very hard. The baseline can be guaranteed by deploying this technology. Second part of it is that we believe in live feedback loop. So every Friday we have our kids take assessments, and we create learning patterns and predictive analytics for each and every child, for each and every demographic. And based on the learning outcome deltas of the demographics or the child, next time the kids log into the system, they are given remedial material and intervention that is specific to their demographic and specific to their learning needs. So essentially, it's a live, auditable system, rapidly scalable, and at this point, still low cost.
Thank you. Dr. back to you. I think you did a wonderful job as far as the idea was concerned, and you managed to get billions of rupees from the private sector. What if someone offers you another challenge to head another university, wherever that might be, and it's with limited resources and limited capacities? How would you run that, or what advice do you have for someone who's running, given the ground realities? If every institution is not announced an ITA or AKU or Habib University, what are the skill sets would you bring to the table where you feel you can get maximum?
First of all, no thank you. I won't run any institution. I have enough of them. I would just lay out what is the most important consideration for the donors. The donors will only invest if they are assured that the other end is credible, is going to deliver what they promise, and it will be cost effective, and there will be no squandering of the resources. If you can assure them, then it doesn't matter whether it is a public sector institution, it is a non-profit organization, or it is a private sector institution. The credibility of the person or the group which is mobilizing the resources is very important. In our case, we had the donor doing the groundbreaking ceremony and also inaugurating the completed building or the facility. So they could see that within the given amount, and we used to have all the accounts sent to them from time to time, and it was on the website. So you must have transparency, and you must account for each single penny. There are a lot of charlatans in Pakistan who pose that they are doing, very useful work, but when you open the box, you find that there is nothing in there. And therefore, there is a reluctance on the part of some donors, even for good cause. So that, I think, is an important component of resource mobilization.
Shamsh, tell me something. AKU is not just a university, it's actually a social enterprise. It is, in some sense, that although some of us think AKU to be like an ivory tower for the rich, it's very expensive. But if you just walk into the courtyard, you'll see most of the people are underserved, part of the underserved community of this country. And the subsidized medical help that is given is touching almost 3 billion rupees per annum. This is the subsidized medical care that is being given to the people. How do you feel, and given that plus you have AKU expanding, the last 4 years and the next 4 or 5 years, it's about nearly $200 million worth of expansion that is taking place. How do you think we can do this balancing act of the social enterprise to keep it viable as well, sustainable, as well as serve the community, a charitable?
That's perhaps one of the most difficult questions as a manager. I can answer the question. That's not the difficulty. The difficulty is how do you make it happen? And I have to say to you that it takes me back to 1979, 1981, when we were planning and looking at the operations of the university, but also of the hospital. I mean, the amount of money that moves around, or the turnover, the revenues, the expenditures at the hospital is almost 10 times whatever is in the university. And then there are patients whose lives are at stake. So you can't compromise on that. If you say, I've taught the wrong course in the wrong liberal arts, so okay, that's fine. But you can't say, I cut the wrong limb off. So what we went through was, and this was His Highness's insistent, show me when you will break even. And we went through, we got experts from America and UK and everywhere, and then their advice we found was good, but not sufficient. I don't want to criticize them, but their understanding of our people was just not there. And we sat down and worked with our own chartered accountants, our own doctors. We got Shaukat Sayyid into this one. We got all the famous physicians and surgeons sitting around the table. And eventually we came up with a model, and we went back to His Highness and said, we can break even in 5 years. He said, but when will you get my money back? What the losses I'm going to suffer for the first 5 years? Because I want to put back that money into the university so it can become self-generating. So we said, oh, we've thought about it, and we came back and said it'll take 11 years. Now, when we opened the doors, that was wonderful. We thought people will crowd the place. We've got a welfare budget, and everybody will come to us, and this is a beautiful hospital. Nobody came. Nobody meaning it was a trickle. Compared to the hordes, the word used in our feasibility studies was hordes will come. So better be careful. No hordes were visible. What happened was people thought कि ये तो बड़ी hospital है, यहाँ हमारे लिए नहीं है कुछ यार, ये तो पैसों वालों के लिए, ये हमारा काम तो यहाँ होगा नहीं. Or no doctor would refer this patient to the university hospital, because once you refer it to the good hospital, the patient is not going to go back to Nazimabad doctor. So this was a very big challenge, and after many iterations, we came to the conclusion that you can never make money on patients who are sitting and sleeping in the hospital. That is a given. Anywhere in the world, ask the National Health Service, they will tell you this. Ask the Canadian Health Service, they will tell you that. So we came up with an idea that if we spread the services of the university hospital across the country and provided good quality diagnostic services, that could generate, without pain of sleeping in a hospital and being cut, that would generate revenues. And the important part was, at the time, and this is what I'm saying, is that it's the quality issue that makes the difference. Eventually people came because my mother was cured, or sometimes I would go in and ask patient, भाई कैसी है देखभाल, पर साहब बहुत अच्छी है, सर्जन साहब ने अच्छा काम कर, जैसे मक्खन में से बाल. I will never forget that expression as I walked through the corridors of the university. So quality meant that people came to our phlebotomy centers and diagnostic centers. Previously, every doctor would say, तुम सिंध लैब चले जाओ और कराची लैब चले जाओ, दोनों रिपोर्ट देखेंगे, फिर हम डिसाइड करेंगे कि क्या हमें प्रिस्क्राइब करना चाहिए. So that made a very big difference. That went for meritorious appointments of doctors, staff, selection of students. All of that was based on merit. And I would say, if ever anybody is establishing any institution, I mean, I know that this is the case at IBA, it is the case at Habib, I'm sure. Merit, because in our mulk, nobody believed that this will be, admission will be on merit. ये तो बात है, सिफारिश तो करने. So I would say, please ensure that merit is the basis, because the poor man in the streets of Liari or out there in the mountains also has an aspiration for his children to become doctors or nurses. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasif, changing mindset is, I think, one of the most difficult tasks one could undertake. You know, societal behavior, etc. It's, you know, it takes a long time. Liberal arts is all about changing, you know, one's perspective, etc. How difficult do you think it will be to change mindsets of not only students but also people, the society that Habib University operates, the whole ecosystem around it? And how long do you think it's going to take, and how are you people undertaking that?
So again, I think the moment in history was, in a warped way, was supporting what we were trying to do. Right? So right when we were in the process of planning for Habib University, there was this conversation that there is this inordinate number of terrorists who happen to be university educated. Right? So there is actually a couple of very good studies as well. So about 500-600 known extremists enrolled in Al-Qaeda in the subcontinent, ISIS, Taliban have been tracked. One thing in common, all have university degrees. Another thing in common, they are mostly engineers and doctors, and the MBAs are at number 3, right? So this was one of the insights that we had, that the type of education that a society like Pakistan requires a re-engagement with humanities and social science in some platform, while they can do their engineering and other things. I actually had the good fortune of meeting with His Highness the Aga Khan a couple of years ago, and he was kind enough to ask for my opinion regarding liberal arts. So my response to him was that, with all due respect, Your Highness, one can be a fully functional human being and not be a doctor and not be an engineer. But you can't be one without a sense of identity and history of yourself and whatever is around you. So if the universities are completely refusing to engage with it, they are sidestepping that question, undermining that question, are incapable, intellectually incapable of dealing with it, then there are so many other enterprises who are responding. Now with technology, there are many more. So this was one of the things that was at the heart of, so that was lucky for us. So to share this narrative became somewhat plausible. The other one was that employers. So the employers, not only in Pakistan, but generally, they were relatively open about expressing their dissatisfaction with university graduates, especially regarding softer skills, communication, working in a diverse team, to be able to resolve a conflict, to be able to think creatively, and so on. So that again created a good platform for us. The third thing, which is a structural problem that we confronted, and we are trying to solve that in Pakistan, all with this woeful picture of primary education, when it gets to secondary, all high school, almost all of high school in Pakistan is done through local examination boards. Only 7 to 9% of high school graduates come out of international boards, which is your A-level and a sliver from American and IB. When it comes to admission in top universities, this picture is reversed. So about 90+% of students in our top universities, whether public or private, are from A-level background. That means that we have disenfranchised almost all the high school graduation. Now that was again a challenge that we undertook. Now Habib is, because of the generosity of the founders, just as you disconnected or decoupled patients from any kind of sustainability, we have decoupled students from any kind of sustainability, right? So it's a truly needs blind place. So we already have 33% students who are from local examination boards. And there's a vested interest. Now, apart from nice social message that it gives, that in a place like Pakistan, you cannot have a center of excellence, and I am kind of addicted to adhering to your topic. You won't get many Nobel laureates come here and teach, right? Or not teach for long. So you cannot rely on completely projecting a center of excellence based on the stature of your faculty. So there is another component which makes a university excellent. Those are students. And Pakistan is 200 million people. But if we are disenfranchising 95% of our students from coming to the university, then you won't get that threshold of excellence. So we had to remove that structural barrier, right? So we have a program which allows local examination board students to enroll on full scholarships. 25% of the class is set aside for that. Because of that program, about 33%, as I've already shared, are from that. So we are committed to creating perhaps the most excellent group of students, and diverse as well, which is going to be the mainstay of excellence at Habib University, and that attracts excellent faculty. Now, IBA, with all the wonderful work and legacy that Dr. Ishrat has left, has 64 PhDs. Habib University already has that. So as I said, that we are standing on these platforms that Aga Khan and IBA has established for us to be able to pursue that. But because of this insight that I've shared with you, that universities in the world become excellent because of systematic steps that they take, starting all the way from its mission to how they govern themselves and what kind of strategy do they deploy. So in Pakistan, my advice to anybody who is that the key strength in Pakistan is the quality of students. Just prior to this session, we had a presentation by Habib University students in this room about a book that they have authored that Oxford University Press has published it, right? So the excellence is self-manifest, right? Thank you.
So, Sabahat, yours is all about artificial intelligence and algorithms and future technology. So, taking a cue from that, 2028, 10 years from now, how do you see United We Reach impact? What is your vision? And how do you, from an impact as well as from a quality point of view, how do you see an ideal government school where you have all your artificial intelligence platforms, etc. running? What is your vision future?
Okay. Amin, one thing that I probably should emphasize is that the AI part, the augmented intelligence, the deep machine learning, all of these are enablers, and they are only used as a way to measure and constantly improve. But the core of the program and the core of whatever we are all about is about creating shaur in education, about inculcating wisdom, about bringing in a change of ushering in critical thinking, deductive logic back into the system, of ushering in a generation of students who understand the value of the didactic method, but also understand that education itself started in the Socratic way of asking good questions. And from good questions comes invention. From good questions comes improvement in the social aspect of creating better citizenry for, not for just Pakistan, but for the entire world. And from there would come the, so I would like to see that while technology is an enabler and an improvement measure, but the fundamentals of education as it was envisioned should be a very core part of it, and that should be recognized. What we would like to see is that we should be able to, from this generation of students, have innovators and inventors. We should have job creators and not just job seekers. And we should have a better citizenry of Pakistan, which is not mired in whatever all of us have been referring to, of having a mindset. And we'd like to also see a change. See, a lot of educational outcomes have derived out of assessment methods. So even today, our assessment methods are, and probably what you were just referring to is why you see this balance tilted towards A-level student versus regular students. Because so far, our assessment systems are geared towards creating civil servants and military people. They're not geared towards assessing what makes a better human. So as you continue to improve, I would like to see all of the above and a major shift in the way we assess our citizens and our students.
So, what is the impact? What is the quantum? We understand the quality. What is the impact? Because, going forward, it's the Uber platform and the, all the Airbnb, etc. Yours is, in a way, is also a platform. It's a virtual thing. What do you think can possibly be the reach of your initiative?
technically we are an open source platform and it should be available to the entire world. And not only would teachers from Pakistan and students from Pakistan, once we open source the platform, be able to create content, but teachers globally should be able to add to the platform. So yes, it would become a kind of a platform where we are open sourcing information from all parts of the world. And the platform, since it's taking in, it has a huge data set, it has all the students of the world data coming in there, the improvement mechanism would be far more precise than it is today.
Just on a note, I visited Sabahat's office in Lahore. She left her family and put her career on hold and shifted to Lahore from the Silicon Valley. There's about 40 people working in Silicon Valley on this project, about 70, 80 people working in Lahore. And you know, the amount of dedication that they have put in, it's just, so I have a lot of hope from your okay. Guys, we only have 10 minutes left. I'll only take questions, no comments, please. 3, maybe 4. Let's go for it. Show of hands. What's up? Quickly.
I got a question from Mr. Wasif Rizvi. You go to the liberal website and there's a lot of Islamic. You know, the whole page is replete with Islamic.
Can you put the mic close to you?
Yeah. I mean, you got the idea. I mean, when you basically look up a liberal arts elsewhere on the planet, it doesn't have, the page is not full of Islamic. And here, you're basically, your page is like replete with Islamic. Hasn't this to do with identity and history of yourself? Like you said, I mean, philosophically, why do you have so much Islam? It's like closed, all right? Liberal arts program is not open. Is there a reason for that?
Thank you. Yeah. All right, next question. We'll take 2 or 3 questions together and then we'll ask them. Please go ahead. Dr. Mehman, sir, you can shout also.
Yeah, that's right. I have enough voice, I can hear. Yeah.
Despite of a cold, you
My
can
question is to Ms. Sabahat. It's wonderful to Sabahat, wonderful to hear you. As long as the learning is concerned, perhaps you have done wonderful work, and you just described assessment process. The assessment this seems to be fine at the classroom level. When the students move to external examination, and Mr. Dr. Wasif Rizvi just mentioned the local examination board, they are meant for assessing students memorization and rote learning. So now I can really see the disconnect what we do and what we assess. So how are you addressing this issue in order to enable students to improve quality of education?
Thank you, sir. Next, one over here. Please. ऐसी पूछ रहे एक वहाँ है just shout it.
So as someone who has experienced both ends of quality education in Pakistan, I was lucky enough to be a part of a LEAP and now I'm in NED. My question is that sad reality is
You are part of Habib School?
No, Habib University, and now I'm in NED. Okay, so the sad reality is that only the government education is accessible to the mass, right? So who is responsible for bringing a change in the system, like individuals like you or the government? Because there is no chance of seeing a change or revival in the system in at least a decade or so.
Right. Okay.
So I completely agree with you that a country like Pakistan, what we need is a university like Habib that provides liberal arts education. But I do think that the Pakistani mindset is very British, which is most kids graduating ORA levels or even inter, it's like you're going straight to med school or law school or business school. So did you find that was a big barrier when you guys opened Habib, and how do you see that moving forward?
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Sorry, please shout because we won't have time. Go ahead.
My question is that most of your institutions are excellent institutions, but they also have excellent students. What about considering that these excellent institutions should have a mix of below average, average, as well as high average?
Great, thank you, sir. Amin, please go. Shout.
Yes, Mr. Sabahat, we talked about primary education. We run low-cost schools in Karachi. Where do we find good teachers?
Okay, thank you. Shall we? Okay. who wants to go first?
Most questions are to her.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So,
One was Dr. Mehman.
yes. Thank you so much for your kind comments. And assessments, we believe, is what drives the outcome. And so we invest very heavily. In fact, most of our groundwork when we start is, and that is actually the core of all educational systems. So you invest heavily into the assessment rubrics. And that assessment rubric needs to be broadly defined. It cannot be just content. Content in this century is technically also irrelevant because no matter what content you have is already out there. What you need to assess the student on is his or her capability to authenticate, for their capability to research, to collate it, to curate it, and also have real life skills. As we talked about critical thinking, deductive logic, their entrepreneurial skills, their problem solving skills, their capability to form teams. So the assessment rubric that we have is a very sophisticated one. It does take into account the board exam requirements because all our students eventually do have to take that exam. And the funny thing is that we have our own assessment system, and then we do have one class that is in compliance and make sure that our students don't fail on the government exams and still score high, primarily because I can't make the entire change. So we do have that system, and our kids are able to perform well on the board exams or on the literacy and numeracy assessments that they have. But we make sure that our kids, our children, will be performing on assessment rubrics which are in line with the major education systems of the world.
Sabahat, also the teacher capacity issue.
So the teacher capacity issue is that's a problem that will be solved slowly. What we have is that we have already created a complete system that has all the pedagogics and the methodology embedded in it. So our teacher training is essentially for maybe less than a week. Our major focus is because we are in a medium of instruction of English. Our basic training is on bringing the teachers' comprehension and their English fluency and accent skill up to par. Beyond that, everything is already on the tablet. Even on the expression part and the accent part, the tablet already has the entire script read out by somebody. So teachers who have unfortunately been trained and are a product of the rote memory system that we see are able to deliver a baseline. So we don't need new teachers. We have to work with the people that we have on ground. Hopefully the next generation in 2028, we won't need that. But as of now, we work with everybody. We've introduced that system in Africa, and we found in Pakistan, alhamdulillah, we're not Africa, we're doing far better, that even if we found an 8th grader with enough English fluency, the baseline in what could be comparable to English international standards in English, math, and science, our kids perform at par with their peers in the developed world. So that's how we address the problem for now.
Thank you. May I ask Dr. if you can take the question about public and government's role in education. He spoke about the standard disparity and who's responsible for that.
I think the Article 25A clearly places the responsibility on the government, but it doesn't say that the government has to deliver the education. The government can use the non-governmental organization, the civil society, the private sector. The question which arises is what happens to the students from the poor families who cannot afford these institutions? And there the government comes in. So if you look at Punjab Education Foundation and the Sindh Education Foundation, they have these voucher schemes. So I visited a school in Mughalpura, which is all very poor clerks and the workers of the railway. There is a government school and there are private schools. And the Punjab Education Foundation gives a voucher of 300 rupees, which is the tuition fee for the private school, provided they come up to their standards. They test the teachers. And this student can go to this school or they can go to another school. Now this is the responsibility of the government. The private sector school is earning money because they are getting the stipend from the government, and the poor student is getting good quality education. But we seem to have a kind of obsession that's only the government which should open the schools and provide education. If we keep on waiting for that, our net enrollment ratios will never reach 100%, which is our, objective. So it's all hands on the deck approach. Everybody in the community, in the civil society, in the private sector, they should all work together, provided they take care of the disadvantaged and the poor family students so they get quality education. That's the bottom line.
The question over there, meritocracy versus equal opportunity. How should one approach that?
Well, I think it's a well-meant question, but I would frame it somewhat differently. Instead of taking some brilliant students and putting them together with some students who are not well endowed intellectually, we are going to bring everybody's quality down. The teacher won't be able to teach properly, and we won't be able to get the right assessment, and always the bright ones will go up. The reality that we have seen over many, many years of admitting nursing and medical students and students in the IED at AKU is that there are many brilliant minds who are not necessarily sitting in the grammar school or in any of the famous schools or even government schools. They are sitting under the tree and learning under the tree in some godforsaken part of Sindh or Punjab or frontier. What we have done at AKU is that each year 10 or 15 students who did not make the grade in the admission test because the English was not right, this science was not there, but the quality of the brain during the course of the interview, and they were on borderlines. We said that if we can bring them in and give them a track 1 training, in other words, we gave them a full year of exposure, not only about science, math, and English, but also how to live and use a Western toilet, how to eat with a knife and fork, because you bring somebody from the village and he sits in the cafeteria and everybody else is eating in one way, then there is a complex. So we bring them in, and after they are ready for 1 year of training, they go through the examination, entrance examination and interviews, and 90% of them pass. Now I'll give you one example only. There's a Dr. Rajput, Hanif Rajput, not Hanif Rajput, sorry, he's the caterer.
You're hungry?
Hungry, yes. I think he's still in business. But you'll know this man when I mention Hanif. He is the director of the Sabahat Institute in Karimabad. Huh? Bashir Hanif. Thank you. Thank you. Bashir Hanif was one of those persons who sat under a tree and learned his high school or grade school or whatever. We brought him in. It was remarkable that he made the grade. He got married to a fellow student. Both of them went to America. They became cardiologists. He came back. And after he came back, he said, I want a job. I said, I don't have a job. My cardiology department was totally full. So I said, why don't you start something else? So I remember the Yunus brothers were putting up a clinic. I said, why don't you talk? I called them up. I said, here is a young man who can really make a difference. That's the purpose. It's not everybody should come and work for AKU, but they should start something. And the result was that he has become the director. His son is the first student of a second generation from the graduates to be admitted at AKU. They didn't have to go through any kind of special program. So what I'm saying is, we need to think of it differently.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question to you about the gentleman over here. He spoke about your website and Islamic.
And there was another one as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I think that from your comments as well as generally from Sabahat as well, I think there's a major misunderstanding regarding what liberal arts is, right? So I think we need to do a better.
Those weren't my personal opinion. I was just giving
No, I'm just saying that better advocacy job. Some of my marketing people are sitting here. So liberal arts essentially is about engagement, right? And it needs to engage with wherever it is and whatever moment of history it is in. Now, what are the two fundamental questions which are tearing us apart as a people? The question of our political history and our Islamic identity. And a university is not a university if it is sidestepping those two questions. So it is, we have killed about 100,000 of us in the past 13 years by not wanting to talk about it or wanting to talk about it in an absolute lunatic way, right? So this is a different kind of engagement. That's what liberal arts does. So this, what you saw is the evidence of engagement that many universities are either intellectually incapable or they don't have in their program or they are scared to do it. So that's one, right? So this is that. Responding to you, yes, that's a barrier. We have this very instrumentalist understanding of education, that people would just get educated and would get jobs and so on. And somehow we relate it to those disciplines that you highlighted and some more. So the question is that how do we educate both students as well as their parents and counselors and so on, that actually a liberal arts centered education makes them, their prospects far brighter, far superior than students who have only been educated in a narrow educational stream. That's a work in progress. It's a complex message to give out. But I think that with the amount of applications that we're getting and the kind of response that we have, I think we are on the right trajectory to make that dent. And I would like to actually comment on accessibility, right? So globally, there are only 7-8% of the people who are able to go into tertiary education, right? So its fundamental purpose is to cultivate leaders, right? That's what universities are supposed to do. The most advanced private university system in the world is in the US, which has about 26-27% of the enrollment, when it is most advanced and most ubiquitous. So it is not possible to fulfill this role without a very active involvement of the state. That's their responsibility. In Pakistan, it has happened out of accident and a martial law environment and failure of the state to provide basic services, which is not the most ideal environment that private sector has come forward to do tertiary education. It has to be a combination. But this excellence question, which Dr. Lakha has spoken so eloquently about, if one is bringing some form of, let's say, uniformity with which you are bringing in the excellence, right? So regardless of their background, regardless of the type of high school education they have done, then one has created or hopefully cultivated leaders who are invested, who are going to come back like Dr. Hanif, and they have better roots, let's just say that. I give you the example that how ominous is the question of divestment, lack of investment that some of our young men and women have. In the elite, without naming them, high school of this city, I was speaking a few months ago, and there were 800 students who were doing their A-levels sitting in front of me. And I asked them this one question, that if I took away your financial and family concerns, how many of you would like to remain in Pakistan? 0. So this is what we have caused. We would not be able to, even if we wanted to, whatever high ideals we have, we won't be able to retain Habib students back in Pakistan if we didn't bring the students from every part and every background in Pakistan.
That's a very, very relevant point. I recently, let me conclude on a joke. I recently read a joke. This guy was really desperate. He was praying, oh God, please, I need $1 billion lottery. Some of you might have heard that. And nothing would happen, and he would continue to pray. And then ultimately, out of desperation, he's standing on the edge of the cliff and saying, God, if you don't give me that $1 billion lottery, I'm going to jump. And so suddenly the voice comes that, you know, I'm happy to meet you halfway, but why don't you buy a ticket? and I think here's the question I'm going to leave all of you with. All right. If you're looking for a Naya Pakistan, it's not going to come from any political slogans or anything of that sort, If you look at the socioeconomic indicators, top 15, we are almost at the bottom, and no atom bomb will give us health and education, etc. Right? So if we are at this stage, the Naya Pakistan will come through all of you. These gentlemen here, ladies and gentlemen, on the stage are a few aspiring role models, which you can say. And every morning, whenever you guys get up, think about, did you buy that ticket for the day or not? All right?
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.